Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for waiting as we're just getting organized to get started here. I think we've got a good group today. I think we'll have more people joining as we go along. But for those of you who got here right on time, we don't want to keep you waiting, so we're going to get going. I want to welcome you back to our Institute of Directors Lunch and Learn webinar series. We did take a break in July, but now we're back and ready to roll through the end of the year. Really excited about what's on the menu here. So before we get started with the main event with Dr. Malcolm Shore, I want to just cover a couple of items. We're super excited that the first cohort of our Certified Directors course will graduate on October 1st. It's really an exciting milestone for us and for them. It's been a great year with them. We're looking forward to all of their alumni activities as we go along, and they'll be participating in ongoing continuing professional development. Because once you graduate from our course, we don't just leave you out there. We make sure that you have all of the tools to stay current and connected for the rest of your career as you lead to become a board director. The next course actually begins soon after on October 21st. You can still sign up for that. We have just a couple of spots remaining. You may know we really try to keep these cohorts small, fairly intimate, because the personal interaction within the group is really super important, as everyone who's taken the course this time will testify to. But anyway, if you are interested, let me know and we'll get you everything you need to review and walk you through the process. Our next half-day workshop is scheduled for the 10th of September at Tribe Hotel. It's a half day. We'll focus on all aspects of leadership. Essentially, what we're doing is taking the whole 4-week module of the director's course and just consolidating it into a 4-hour workshop. So you get the top line. That'll give you a little bit of a taste of what you might see in a full director's course if you decide to look into that in future years. Our October workshop will focus on actually critical thinking and leadership. We'll be very hands-on with lots of tabletop exercises that would be helpful to anyone at any level of your professional ladder or path. And then finally, our November workshop will focus on ESG with a very special guest presenter. Back to leadership, our September webinar, just like this, will take a deep dive into your personal leadership style and how to manage yourself and others who may have similar or vastly different styles. That's going to be a lot of fun and enlightening. So stay tuned for that. We'll have all the information out pretty shortly. But so enough of my housekeeping and institutional promotion here. Let's get to the main event. I'll say back by popular demand is Dr. Malcolm Shore, who's an uber expert in all things cyber. He's joining us from New Zealand today, his home. He's the technical director at Code One, and he's a UN cybersecurity diplomat, that's a mouthful, and a GFCE partner, among many other things, current and past. You'll see a lot more about that in his presentation in just a bit. But for now, I just want to thank him and you for joining us for this discussion about the role of leadership in AI and the strategy and operational aspects around the risk and opportunity in your business when you and your teams are using AI. It's more complicated than we all might have thought a couple years ago and might be coming into a little bit more of a term as we move forward. But as always, feel free to drop your questions into the comment sections, and we'll also have verbal questions at the end. So Dr. Shore, I'll turn it over to you and your expertise. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ginny, for that introduction. I'll just put up the slides. Okay. So as Ginny said, what we're going to do today is just take a look at the leadership perspective on artificial intelligence. And in background, as Ginny mentioned, I'm a partner with the Global Forum of Cyber Expertise and a UN cyber diplomat. I'm a visiting researcher at Deakin University. My duties there are PhD supervision. I'm an educator with LinkedIn Learning, and my experience covers government as Director of InfoSec for New Zealand, as well as cybersecurity as the CSO for NBN, Huawei, and Telecom, and technical director roles as well. What I'd like to do is just cover four major sections over the next 40 minutes or so. The state of AI, the board challenge in managing AI ethics, which is a really key part of artificial intelligence, and a much different aspect of the technology than we've seen in the past in things like cybersecurity. And then governing AI effectively and how to really get the best out of artificial intelligence and avoid falling into the traps that perhaps exist. So starting with the state of AI, what is AI and where are we with it? Well, it's a cacophony. It's a cacophony allegro. There's a lot of noise. There's a Claudes and Codys and hidden layers and LangChains, Colabs and llamas and transformers and chirps. That the acronyms flood in day after day after day, and they're coming at pace. It's difficult to really know what really is going on. There are people really pushing their own opinions, usually in the AI sector with their own particular services to offer. And it's not getting any easier. We've seen on top of AI that we haven't really got to grips with yet, all of a sudden, we've now got LangChains and LangGraphs and everything's agents now. Mixture of experts, crew, small agent. What does it all mean? So let's just kind of take that absolute cacophony and just pull it aside and look at what is it that we're really talking about with AI. And if we go back a few years, we kind of started with rule-based chatbots, which were very predictive type solutions that we put in to answer questions and save money in call centers. They were okay, not particularly well received in many cases by customers, but they kind of started the sense of, well, let's see if we can replace our own work with automated systems. And then we came over the last couple of years to generative AI assistance. And this was in the form of large language models. And more recently, we've seen the evolution into small language models and a lot more commentary around small language models, and particularly language models that can start to appear as capabilities on our mobile phones and laptops. And the generative AI assistants have been more than chatbots. They've been able to not just take a series of predetermined paths, but actually take a question and, at the risk of anthropomorphism, think about it, because they don't really think, but come up with a slightly more nuanced answer than we've had with traditional chatbots. And that's been really the kind of focus towards the end of 2024 and the first part of this year. As this year progressed, we saw increasing commentary around agents and agentic AI. An agentic AI, an agent is a generative AI model. It's a chat GPT, but it has special purpose models. So we might have chat GPT doing some planning and calling another model to do a report writer and another model to do research. So we have multiple models working together, essentially passing information to each other and creating what we want as an answer by iterating between themselves and using tools as well, tools like file search systems and web search systems, and in fact, tools to take over control of your laptop and actually run browsing for you if you want that. What an AI agent doesn't have, and the courts have made this very clear, is accountability. The accountability is ours, and that's a really key thing when we come to think about using agents in our businesses, is that the agent isn't accountable for its actions. Someone in the business is. And so we really need to be very clear when we start deploying these agents where the chain of accountability lies. So we'll get on to that. But agents really have kind of come into their own this year. There's a lot of talk about them, about digital twins, where we will have an agent working with us that will do the work for us and will be much more productive, or that we'll move out and an agent will come in as a virtual employee and take over our role. So that's kind of where we are with the evolutionary view of generative AI. AI is following a very predictable path, and Gartner really kind of capture it with what they call the hype cycle. And the Gartner hype cycle starts with an innovative technology, and everybody starts getting really excited about what it can do. And it suddenly becomes the silver bullet to answer everybody's problems about everything. And then it becomes hyped beyond what it can do into inflated expectations. And then it doesn't actually achieve that because the technology can't do it. It's just our expectations are inflated. And so we get disillusioned because it's not achieving what we want it to achieve. And it drops into the trough of disillusionment. But eventually it starts emerging from that and becoming more productive. And it's not that AI is going through this as a technical evolution, it's that our expectations are going through this hype cycle. It's interesting to look at the hype cycle where it's placed. This is the recently released Gartner 2025 model, which has moved on a little bit from the 2024 one. We see at the very top of the peak of inflated expectations, AI agents. In 2024, foundation models were at the top. Well, we can see there dropping down the slide into disillusionment. And ChatGPT and the release of GPT-5 is an absolute classic case of that, where everybody thought ChatGPT was going to solve the whole world's problems and it would become the workforce for everybody. And all of a sudden, it really went out like a fizzler. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more shortly. But foundation models really are losing their glitter. Generative AI in general is becoming seen as a bit of fakery and a bit. We expected a lot of it and it didn't provide it. And of course, it never produces the right answer. It always produces the wrong answers. AI agents are going to answer that for us and they'll solve all the problems. That's why they're at the top of the inflated expectation curve. And they're not. They're also going to fail to do what we would like to think they'll do, and we'll also get disillusioned with them. I think there's some key things on this graph. The artificial general intelligence, the yellow triangle, is what we've heard Sam Altman saying. Oh, GPT-5 is going to be general intelligence. It's going to be as intelligent as a person. Gartner have been saying for a long time, and I agree with them, this is over a decade away. We are well away from general intelligence. It's being touted as a sales and marketing pitch. It's not real. We may well get to general intelligence with language models and the technology behind them, but we're certainly not there or anywhere near there yet. The other one that to just be aware of is AI TRISM, which is the trust, risk, and security component of AI. And that's in its inflated stage. So we need to secure AI systems and make them safe and responsible. But we have to be careful that we don't fall for the hype that comes out about, oh, this will solve all your problems. Yes, oh, well, AI doesn't work, but this will work. It's the magic box you add to it, and then it'll all work perfectly. What it means isn't that any of this is bad or it's wrong or it'll never work. What it means is we have to be careful with our expectations, and we have to apply due diligence to the way we work with AI. What we're hearing in the last few days or the last couple of weeks is the AI bubble will pop. And in the last week, we've lost $1 trillion from the stock market. So obviously the bubble's rapidly popping. Well, I just want to put that in perspective. And if we look at the AI sector over the last 2 years, we can see that Palantir have increased in their stock value 959.75%. NVIDIA, 274%, 154% for Meta, and so on. And this is the graph through to the 27th of August. So the $1 trillion drop is that little blip on the right-hand side where it goes down a little bit. We don't really need to start panicking about a bubble popping when we look at what we've seen as the growth. We might get a correction, but we certainly haven't seen a dramatic runaway from AI. We've seen some profit taking. And so I don't know, I can't predict the future, but I do believe that the AI bubble popping is an overreaction and not reality. But I think just putting it in context of what's happened in the last 2 years kind of gives it a bit of a sense of where it sits. But let's have a look at the good and the bad. Generative AI has proved to be of value. There are people getting value out of it. There are people making money from it. But it's shown itself to be fallible. And we've seen lawyers going into court with precedents and waiving them and then suddenly being found out because they're fake generative AI precedents. We had a real explosion of, oh, let's all use the vibe coding capabilities, Replit and all of those. And what we're seeing now is a lot of the professional programmers saying, oh, no, we're going back to using VS Code and doing it using our IDEs. We'll still use AI. We'll use it to kind of do some stuff for us, but we're going to do the programming, because when we get AI to do the programming, we spend more time trying to get it into shape than we do if we did it ourselves in the first place. I did exactly that. I went on to one of the vibe coding platforms, got it to build an application for me. It built it. I had to do one change and it worked. But then when I wanted to try and get it to work the way I wanted it to and have the kind of feel that I wanted it to have, I spent more time doing that than I would have writing it myself. So I think some of that early excitement is going. Dominance of the US artificial intelligence sector has been shaken by Chinese capabilities. The US sector was, well, we've got AI. We know we just throw more hardware at it and it gets even bigger and better. And then the Chinese came along and said, oh, we were smarter. And it runs at 1/10 the cost. And that was a real kind of watershed moment where the US said, oh, actually, we do need to really keep focused on that smart side of it. It's not just throw hardware at it. Now, having the hardware and having the smarts is good. There's a 95% failure rate in AI pilot projects. We'll come back to that before the end of the presentation, but AI projects are failing, and we need to understand understand why if we're going to use AI effectively. Agentic AI has been promoted as the employee replacement. CBA, for example, had plans to replace their call center with AI agents. Well, they've wound back on that. 50% of companies in one survey that were surveyed had plans to use agentic AI to replace employees by 2027. 50% have cancelled those plans. So we're starting to see some of the luster of agentic AI starting to just dull a little bit. Virtual employee capability, there's a report that we'll look at, shows that virtual employees who will do a basic office job, AI replacement systems can achieve maybe 1/3 of what they can do. 1/3 of the AI capability is able to deliver what a human can do. So it's just another indicator that we're not quite there yet. ChatGPT-5 was underwhelming. It was promoted as solving all the problems and taking over. It wasn't even as effective as the old GPT-4. And actually, I think OpenAI knew that. I think they were very clear that this was not trying to take over the world with AGI. It was purely a survival strategy to counter the fact that DeepSeek had come out and could offer a service at 1/10 the cost. And GPT-5 is much more efficient than GPT-4, but it's not as good. Now, OpenAI now have a challenge. They've fallen flat on their face twice. Once when DeepSeek came out, and now having put GPT-5 out as something that's underwhelming. I don't think it's going to kill them, but I think they've got a lot of work to do to really get to where they should be. GPT-5 is a step on the way, but that was not really a very good step to be released. The path to successful AI adoption is really to really focus on the business problems from a business point of view. We don't need to be taken by the hype, but we don't need to be disillusioned by it either. We just need to make sure we architect AI to solve business problems, build a solid foundation where we increase the performance of our systems by the use of well thought out AI and evolve that to innovative use of AI. So the board challenge is AI will be transformational. That was the comment last year. It hasn't changed. It still seems to be AI is a technology of the future, and it will be a very significant part of the future. AI will be transformational. Early adopters will thrive, and late adopters will decline. So for the board, that brings a number of issues. Firstly, ROI is not being achieved. 3 months ago, it was 80% of projects are failing. The last report that came out is 95% of projects are failing. The board needs to ensure that its investment in AI is good investment and that the projects don't fail. But it needs to be careful that it doesn't discard the opportunities by being disillusioned with AI. There are opportunities to be taken. There are efficiencies to be gained. There's innovation to be achieved. And we need to make sure that we do grasp that without taking too much risk. There are some risks with AI over and above the risks that the business already has with technology, legal and reputational damage if AI malfunctions, and the increased potential for cyber attack because of the increased attack surface. But they're risks that we can handle, and we need to architect our solutions to handle them. Just kind of looking at a couple of the analyst opinions. McKinsey research, still the latest research, sizes the long-term AI opportunity at $4.4 trillion in productivity growth potential from corporate use cases. So this is not 4.4 trillion for Microsoft and OpenAI selling services. This is for corporate use cases to gain that value. So, as a director in a business that is a thoughtful leading business, we want to grasp some of that opportunity value. Gartner have also got some views as part of their hype cycle review that 30% of AI leaders report their CEOs are happy with AI investment return, 70% aren't. Low maturity organizations have trouble identifying suitable use cases, and they don't understand AI sufficiently, and therefore their expectations are unrealistic. Organizations, on the other hand, are struggling to find the skilled professionals and the strategies for instilling literacy in Gen AI in their businesses. So, some challenges there. And ServiceNow, their report on the use of AI in their customer base is that over the last year, AI maturity in enterprises has dropped 10%. And still, the businesses, 82% of the businesses expect to increase their investment in AI. So this is a challenge in that lower maturity means less success, but there's more investment going in. That's more money going to be lost. We're still seeing that the pace setters, the businesses that really are mature and understand how to use AI and how to gain value from it, half of them are gaining value from it, but a quarter of the businesses who are less mature. Just reinforcing the fact that AI is seen as being transformational, and despite the problems, businesses really need to get on board. 74% of CEOs in the Data IQ report are saying that if they don't deliver measurable AI business gains from AI over the next 2 years, they're going to lose their jobs because they're going to fall behind and be one of the laggards, not one of the leaders in their sector. So just some commentary that really kind of reinforces, particularly the Gartner's view of AI. Looking at the executive challenge for businesses adopting AI, the number of reported AI incidents is rising. We'd expect that with the use of AI increasing, but it just reinforces that as the board require AI to be adopted and the executive adopt it within the business, they really need to look at not just AI, but secure, safe, and responsible AI. An example of that, one of the recent incidents was the Grok AI system that comes from X, from Elon Musk's company, that suddenly started becoming very fascist. It didn't help so much that Elon Musk really didn't counter that with an apology or anything. It was really more well, AI should be allowed to do that, which really doesn't sit well with the ethical position that's being taken on AI. I thought this was an interesting graph just to give a bit of a visual sense of the fact that as human beings, we are still valuable. The lower, more horizontal curves are the performance of AI as the AI task becomes more difficult, or the task becomes more difficult. And what we've seen as the task becomes a 30-minute task to a 2-hour task to an 8-hour task, the AI can still achieve results, but it takes more and more. It's just a little bit more effective over that time period, whereas human beings really, the human being curve really spikes up. And we are good at solving problems, and long-term problems, not just short-term problems. Again, just reinforcing that whole sense that AI isn't quite there yet. This is the Agent Company. It's essentially a pseudo company. It's a website promoted by Carnegie Mellon University. And what it does is it challenges AI agents to do the job that a young intern might do for browsing the web, passing some information to their co-worker, doing an administrative task. Just a basic routine snapshot of work. And what the results show is that 33% of the best result is Claude Sonnet 4 that's just been released, which is at the level of 33% success rate. And as we see, Claude 3.5 is at 24%. All the other AI models are way down below that. OpenAI's GPT and so on. Gemini kind of gets in there. Gemini 2.5 gets in there at 30%. So that level, that Agent Company snapshot was at June this year. So it gives us a sense that the agents aren't quite there yet. I just want to show a little bit of a demonstration. So it's talking about this is fine, but actually seeing it in action is useful. And I want to have a little bit of a look at a question about Johann Adolf Haas, who wrote operatic music. He was baptized on the 25th of March. It doesn't say when he was born. It doesn't say when he was born, so I asked AI when he was born. Let's see what various AI systems thought about that. So this is running Mistral, which is a well-known AI model. So I ran it and asked the question, and it says February the 27th in Kassel, Germany. I stopped it and asked the same question again of the same AI. This time, he was born on February the 28th in the Duchy of Saxe-Gotha-Altenburg. So I asked Mistral again. So tell me, when was he born? This time he was born on March the 24th. So we've got February the 27th, February the 28th, and March the 24th. So I'll move to the Chinese GLM-4 model. Let's see what the Chinese think about. Well, apparently he was born on October the 29th, according to GLM-4. GLM-4 is actually a very good model. But it doesn't really know much about classical operatic music coming out of the Italian sector. But it is consistent. DeepSeek, that's the scary model that everyone's worried about. That was August the 4th. And we'll ask DeepSeek again just to see if DeepSeek's consistent. Oh, it's February the 26th. So we had 26th, 27th, 28th of February. So we're filling the days in February here. Let's go to another AI model, Gemma, which is a Google model. December the 24th, according to Google. Well, actually, let's just see, according to Google, if it's always December the 24th. No, apparently it's April the 23rd sometimes. Or possibly. And we do have a bit of consistency here. We've decided it really was December the 24th in the first place. I then went, and these are local models that were running on my server. I then went to run, and the Music AI is a connection into the OpenAI service that the ChatGPT service that OpenAI offers. And it came out at March the 25th, which actually was the day he was baptized. So unless he was baptized on the same day he was born, that was wrong as well. What it demonstrates is that all those were very definitive answers. There wasn't any I thinks or it was born on this date. We have to be very careful at this. It is still a fragile and brittle technology. The future of, and that was one of the classes of hallucination, which is the wrong answer. The future of AI hallucinations, according to the researchers, our current rate of hallucination at the very best is 0.7%. Well, we saw a little bit more than that in those. But they do see that there is a research path to really drop this. And I think all this is really showing, or all I really wanted to show with this was we can expect AI to get better. There is more research to be done over the next 5 years, and we will see that improve. A very quick look at AI ethics. What is ethical AI? The problem with AI is it can impact staff in the business, it can impact society, our users, and other businesses, but also staff in our business can impact our enterprise by misusing AI. So there's some ethics there and also some internal acceptable use issues. Harvard has 3 major areas of ethical concern: privacy and surveillance, which is, do we really want to be using AI technology for this? And that's a major issue in the Europe and the EU. Bias and discrimination. We don't want AI to amplify the biases that we already have, which it can do. And the role of human judgment. We need to keep humans in the loop so that humans are in control of this technology and are making the decisions. The Council of Europe has a taxonomy of concerns and ethical challenges, and we can see some of these issues again: bias and discrimination, opacity. The AI model suddenly deciding that no, you can't have the job. Oh, why not? It's opaque. Nobody can really understand what's happening inside the model. It's not coded. It's a probabilistic model that works from a very complex data structure. And it's not in many cases, it's not really explainable. So there is a movement to really say, well, we need to have explainability and observability inside the decision making. How do we do ethical auditing? How do we audit ethics? There's a challenge there on really kind of coming to grips with what that means. ISACA has done some work on that and has come up with an advanced AI position, which includes audit of ethical AI. But there's lots of challenges to look at as we look at the ethics. UNESCO have produced a number of recommendations on the ethics of artificial intelligence, and these are definitely worth looking at, whether the board is given a briefing on the ethical issues, or whether they pick up the recommendations from UNESCO and individually read them. They're worth understanding because they really underpin what is coming in as a very strong regulatory requirement for ethics from businesses. And we can see some of the issues of ethical impact assessments, ethical governance and stewardship, data policies, which we already have in terms of privacy, gender bias and culture alignment, and other things. Economy and labour, which is the issue of staff being replaced. And some principles of ethics around proportionality, safety and security, fairness and non-discrimination, sustainability, and so on. So these are the principles that UNESCO promotes as we adopt AI. I just wanted to cover a couple of the other issues, which is what can staff do to damage the company. In this case, it was an example of a child worker in the Victoria government. This happened a few months ago. Used ChatGPT to draft up a protection application report in a child abuse case. That really closed down AI in the Victoria government, while the IT part of the government put up their own AI model that was not out in the public domain. One of the challenges with this is OpenAI some months ago decided it would be a really good idea to, when you use ChatGPT, help everybody with the building the effectiveness of GPT by sharing any information you put in across the whole GPT landscape. And so GPT was starting to share everybody's prompts and everybody's material they were putting in across the world. Now, they've pulled back on that a little bit, but we have to be a little bit careful that there's a lot of incentive for the AI model companies to use your data to train their models. And we need to be very careful that we understand what's happening with that data. The second one is just the example that I alluded to earlier on the legal arguments. In this case, it was, and there's a number of these legal issues that have come up. This one was a British one, and they had 5 fabricated cases brought into court. The court issued wasted costs orders against the solicitors and barristers, and the judge criticised the use of outsourcing legal research to generative AI and not checking it. Again, human in the loop. You can use generative AI to do research, but you have to have humans in the loop to just verify that the results you get are effective. So how do we govern AI effectively? So there's some points here that you might want to think about. From a board point of view, establishing an AI council that can handle the strategic and ethical view of AI and manage the overall approvals for AI operation within the business. In particular, the AI ethics statement. And then the AI council establishing a steering committee for projects that reports to the council to make sure that projects are applying the ethical requirements, are conforming to the business requirements for AI, conforming to the AI policy. Leading a culture of AI competence, approving AI policy and directing AI audit to make sure that what's happening in the business is in line with governance requirements. So establishing a council at the strategic level and a steering committee at the tactical level is a key strategy for the board to really take control of AI and be confident that they have good governance able to be deployed within the business. And there's a few commentaries on that there. One of the things that we in Code One have been doing some work on is the how to effectively implement authority to use AI. And we have a delegation of AI authority process that makes sure that AI isn't centralized and therefore stifled. It is able to be deployed and used, and people can use it in their day-to-day work, but they can do that under a program of official delegated authority that says, this is the limit of what you can do with it. If you want to do any more, you have to ask for additional authority, or it has to be done by a project or something. So having an enterprise architecture that links AI to the business value chains means that we capture business value. We use AI to capture business value, whether that's in efficiencies or innovation. Have enterprise domains defined to drive effective risk ownership so that the risk is managed by the person with the most vested interest to make that risk within appetite. And And obviously, the risks then drive a control framework that the enterprise architecture will encapsulate, that will meet those, that will mitigate those risks. And by having it managed within an enterprise architecture, making sure that the control framework is effective and that we're not taken by the hype of security products. And these are some of the elements of the delegated authority that we have, just to give a bit of a sense of what it really is trying to achieve. So the good advice on using AI is, don't try and do everything on day one. Don't just jump into AI and go for a wildly exciting project. Set up a foundational capability of AI within the business that is properly managed, that builds trust with the staff, with customers, with the board, with stakeholders, and demonstrates the management of risk and the management of cost. Then move on to the next stage, where there's some autonomy introduced into workflows, where we are confident that the autonomy is being properly managed within the business, that there's the proper human in the loop elements, there's the proper dispute resolutions and everything else, and gain efficiencies that way. And then when we've got that under our belt and we're really confident, move on to the autonomous, innovative projects which give us strategic value and competitive edge. But do this in a staged way that allows us to avoid jumping in and making the mistakes that cause the failure of so many projects. This is just a bit of a sense of, is there actually any real use of AI in business? Well, this is a set of use cases, and I don't want to go into any of them in detail, but it's just a visual to give you a bit of a sense of all the different industry sectors and what are the use cases that people have come up with that they found value in. And there's a lot of them. So we can come up with use cases in the architecture that will help us point to where we can capture some of that value. This is an example of one of them, which was a medical system, a medical AI agent. And this gives a little bit of a sense of what it was used for. And it's not getting AI to do everything and create magic results. It's basically using AI to achieve efficiencies and do support for the processes that are already in place. The other one that's quite interesting is Sastra, which is a security as a service, software as a service company. One of the really thoughtful companies that's really understands how to use AI, and they've used AI in their revenue team, their operations and experience team, and their community and education team. They have a set of agents, each doing a particular job. What they found is they have got a return on investment. Their cost per agent is 200 to 4,000 a month compared to cost per human of 800 to 12,000. Now, there's no real sense I have there of is that apples to apples. Humans don't just do a single task, they do multiple things, but on the basis that this is their kind of promotion of their success, it looks like that's a reasonable assessment. They found that their response time was, the performance was better. They managed to capture more leads because they came out of business hours where staff weren't working. And there was no bad days or, oh, I don't really feel like doing this, or oh, I can't be bothered, just say no to that. There are no emotional days in the AI. We talked about 95% failure rates. When we dig into what were the real characteristics of the 5% that were successful, there were three things that came out of them. The first was buy, don't build. A lot of those 95% were business projects where the technology teams wanted to go and do AI. This was really exciting, this AI stuff. Let's go and do it. We've had some great ideas. Well, was that really effective? Or was it really a training exercise for the individuals, kind of packaged in some kind of pseudo business requirement. So the successful projects were those that bought services and didn't build them. They executed within the business unit, not the technology unit. It was business led with a business problem that was being solved. And it integrated with business workflows. So it went into the value chain. It didn't just sit there as a technology outside any value chain. It went into the business's value chain and gained some of that value for the business. So those are the three real things that differentiate the 5% from the 95%. What are some things that the board can do on the strategy and risk side? Ensure AI initiatives align with the enterprise vision and mission. AI isn't there to change the business. The business is there to use AI. So AI must align with the mission and the vision of the business. And strategic planning, there should be an AI strategic plan, and it should be monitored like any other strategic plan. It may be just part of an existing strategic plan. None of this has to be AI only. The management system, the strategic plan, the policies can all be integrated with existing artifacts in the business. Stakeholder engagement, the board can maintain transparent communications with regulators, shareholders, and they can make sure that management is communicating with employees, customers, and stakeholders so that there are no surprises. This is well communicated, and that AI risk is integrated with enterprise risk, and that management is handling risk effectively, not only from implementing, not being disillusioned and not implementing and losing opportunity, but also implementing to minimize in a way that minimizes the risks. There is a management system. ISO have produced the 42001 management system. It's the AI equivalent of 9001, which is quality, 20,000, which is service management, 27,001, 27,701, the security and privacy management frameworks. The management framework is exactly the same. If you look at the standards, they follow exactly the same set of alignments, roles and responsibilities, resources, oversight, assurance, performance. You can put the AI management into the business management plan, or you can build a separate AI management plan. But make sure that there is a formalized management system, because that will just give you control and governance. And this is just a picture of what's in that, and that should look fairly similar, although it's an AI focused view to any other management system. Policy, roles and responsibilities. The FRAI is an interesting one. If the business is subject to GDPR, it's probably going to be subject to the EU AI Act, and that will potentially require a fundamental rights impact assessment, which is the ethics, really the bite of the ethics in the EU Act. Audit charter. If you're going to have AI in the business, there should be AI auditing. If the internal audit team may need to think about the audit charter and have AI included in that, or have a separate AI audit charter. Upskilling for AI. It's useful for executive and senior management to really understand AI so that the board can really apply its control over ethics and regulation and understand the value that it can bring to the enterprise. Technical and risk staff need to understand what AI is so they can control those risks and make sure that the technology brings value. Auditors need to understand AI so that they can audit it effectively. And staff need to understand it so they understand the limits of what they should do and how they can get the most out of it. One of the interesting reports that came out was that there's a lot more resistance by management than there is actually readiness by employees, and perhaps management should not assume that employees aren't ready for AI and be a little bit more proactive in promoting AI for their employees. A little bit about if we're going to implement awareness for staff, what are the things that will really make awareness for staff and training for staff more effective? A pragmatic hands-on approach rather than theory. Use cases, making sure the training is well organized, and some of this is standard training practice. Expand the number of hands-on exercises and interactive activities, and so on. And then, and I will finish pretty much now, but I'll leave these just as thoughts for you about the questions the board and as a director you may want to ask about AI. Is it solving a business problem? What's our enterprise strategy? Do we have a framework for assessing return on investment? Do we have human oversight? Have we implemented an AI management system? Are we monitoring operational costs? Does our incident response plan allow for AI incidents, and does it contain a communications plan? And then just kind of a takeaway from the webinar. 4 issues. Boards can secure AI value, and they should do that. And they can do that by ensuring that the AI is part of the architecture for the enterprise. So re-architect the enterprise for AI adoption. Doesn't mean change the enterprise's vision and mission. It means make sure the architecture for the enterprise is there to enable AI adoption. Train staff in acceptable and ethical use. Enforce an AI management system to make sure that the governance capability is in place. And make sure audits are there to get that feedback and that assurance that AI is being used effectively. And at that, I'll just note that you don't have to do all the AI work yourself. You can get service providers in to support that for you. And these are just some of the areas of architecture, risk assessment, governance, red teaming, workshop, and audit that you might want to bring in as a service. And at that point, I shall hand back to you, Ginny.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Malcolm. Does anybody have any questions? That's a lot of information to take in, really good information. Certainly gives me a lot to think about. But does anybody here have some questions? Yeah. We will have a recording of this available on our YouTube channel. You can follow us for updates on our Facebook and our LinkedIn. And if you have follow-up questions later or something that you think of, just shoot them over to us, and we'll see if we can get an answer for you from Dr. Shore, who has really been so helpful to us over time, and we're deeply appreciative. So if nobody has questions, Malcolm, thank you again so very much. And thank you everyone for joining us. And we hope to see you again in our next webinar. Take care and have a good rest of your day. Talk to you soon, Malcolm.
Yep. Talk to you soon.